kind of are we doing the rotating where you come up and sit and talk, or are we just talk?
Whatever you prefer.
Whatever you prefer. What do people prefer?
Yeah,
It's not to
what's
me.
everyone thinking?
Stick your arm up.
Can't we just ask?
Yeah, you can just ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We could just sit on
So we're just loosely kind of how. So the topic is like, how do we improve the reputation of PHP amongst the like wider developer community? So to kick that off, I've just been sort of maybe ask you guys. I'll offer some thoughts first and then open it up. Like, if I say I do PHP, there's people seem to fall into two camps. Some people are aware that PHP now is maybe not what PHP was when it first emerged in late 90s and so on. But plenty of people still seem to view it as not a real programming language, and therefore you are not a real developer. And what do you do? That type of thing. But what are people's here? Or?
Yeah, I get the same thing. So I also go to the JavaScript group, the Bristol Jazz, and I've had some flack from people there when I say that I mostly write PHP, including one person who was like, "Oh, PHP still exists," like in a genuine, earnest way. So I think we need to teach those people. I'm doing my best.
Houses, right? JavaScript, like.
I know. But hey, I'm doing my best. I'm going to the Bristol Jets and spreading the gospel. But I feel like, that doesn't scale very well. I mean, telling one person.
See, I think I speak obviously to a lot of primarily PHP developers, but a lot of the developers I do speak to are also quite polyglot. They've worked on a lot of other languages, and I think they're always still really eager to work with PHP. They think PHP is pretty stable. It's it's been around for a while. It's something they're comfortable with and something they're happy with. And I don't think. I haven't really found that a lot of people have felt that way, but maybe it's because I primarily speak to PHP developers. But even if they're because a lot of the people I do speak to find that it's good to know a range of different languages, in case things shift or anything like that. And I haven't really had that kind of negative aspect on it. Even to businesses that I talk to as well, they're very much.
But I guess to counter that, the fact you're talking to them probably means they're using PHP and they already have a positive opinion. I think a lot of it comes from, I certainly feel the negativity comes from people who are less aware because they don't use it and
Yeah, although I have spoken to someone, I was literally saying to Dave earlier, someone who used to work in PHP, had a bit of experience, went and did a bit of .NET, and now they've come back being like, no, I really want to still work with PHP, I find myself comfortable in it, the work tends to be more enjoyable in their experience, and also working in personal projects with it, they've enjoyed it more. So there have been a lot of people that do bounce back to it as well, because it is quite a comfortable language.
I don't think it's bad personally, so I'm not surprised people come back to it. I guess the kind of thing is why is it got that kind of slightly negative perception amongst those that don't know it better? I have a thought to offer. Does anyone want to guess what my thought is?
Typing.
WordPress. Yes. Well done. Not just that. Other people can talk. They don't have to do all the talking. I feel WordPress definitely is a two-edged sword for PHP. It's a very nice gateway drug that means a lot of people pick PHP up as their first language, especially people like me who have no formal programming training and teach themselves and do terrible things until they learn to do better. But there's probably someone else here who's the same. I just decided I liked learning to code and it was pre-WordPress because I'm old, but just make your web page have some dynamic bits on it is how I started, and I think the fact you can do that is a great thing about the language, but it also means there's a lot of people doing some very bad things with PHP which are very detrimental to its reputation.
What about pay?
On the pay side of things, I'd say obviously because I do PHP and I don't do any other remits, it's hard to be able to balance them out in comparison to others, but I think after speaking to some colleagues, I would say probably on the lower end of other languages, definitely. And this was a good example of speaking to individuals that have worked in other languages and then maybe wanted to go back to PHP, had the same bit of experience, but yeah, for example, if you transitioned over from doing something that was like just a React developer for a couple of years and then wanted to go back into PHP, but you've had that same kind of senior experience, that you probably would find a bit of a dip. Not necessarily like a substantial amount, but I think that's one thing that people have found a little bit more of a shock maybe in the market, is that it does pay a little bit lower, I'd say, than, for example, maybe Go or like TypeScript or React, things like that. Not too sure necessarily whether that's the case, but yeah, that is definitely where it's at, I'd say, at the moment.
Do you think that's scarcity, like supply and demand, or is it more deeply?
I'd say maybe a little bit of supply and demand. Like I'm seeing specifically, like with React in the market, that there's a lot more for it. If you're going to work either on like a full stack basis or just as a front end developer in general, there's a lot more need for it. Like a lot of the companies I've worked with as well, like instead of using Vue, they've started to use React, things like that. And so I think there are always going to be trends in the market. There are always going to be things that are a little bit more, you know, like popular at that time. So maybe that is like the case. But yeah, I do think there is a little bit of a trend thing. Like for example, last year there has already been a bit of a change on those kind of side of things as well. But yeah, I would say it's a little bit more on the supplies of some things.
Just to say, I read somewhere recently that 70-odd%, 73% on the internet still written in PHP. So does that not cement its?
I think
It's all word.
Yeah.
Is it a fake
That's
news?
a bit
Is
of a
it?
fake thing. A lot of those tools are only reading like if there's a like served by header in the responsive page, and PHP by default puts like served by PHP. No other language really does that. So it's like a fake thing where it looks like the majority is PHP because nothing else says what they actually use on the back end.
So any idea what the percentage?
I was just going to say, like,
Yeah, this is something I was actually quite interested in. Like, so there are some technologies online, like the new technologies, and they have like websites which are really interesting. That's like made with whatever, and it's got a list of websites that are made with that particular technology. They're always really interesting. I haven't seen one of those for PHP. I would be really interested to know in 2025 what are the big, well-known brands that are using PHP in their to run their companies with. And I don't know if that information is available.
If you're running APIs there, you're not going to see that anyway, are you?
No.
Because your front end will be static or serving,
Exactly.
you know, raw HTML.
Yeah.
All that magic is hidden.
Yeah, exactly. But if PHP went away, if everything running PHP went away right now,
well, just stop
well,
working.
would stop. Yeah,
Sure,
we don't know about it.
We don't do it right now, right, because we're here. You'd be allowed to do it between 9 and 5.
But yeah, so I'm just wondering whether that visibility could improve or how you would do that. I have no idea, but yeah, maybe that's one of the issues. People don't realise what is actually running.
I mean, going back to what puts people off about it, WordPress being one thing, but is the performance of sort of embedded applications like WordPress. In our place, there's been a lot of move on to Lambdas and using TypeScript for performance reasons. But obviously, like PHP now is capable of doing stuff that when someone investigated that maybe even a year, 2 years ago, it wasn't possible. So the decisions are made based on previous people's decisions. And so ultimately the stigma is tied to a bad experience you had in 2015, and so that really carries for people like, oh no, I don't want to touch it because it's shit. And it's just like,
But surely any JS build tool has a bad experience.
any did you say, or every? Yeah, I mean, we were saying about doing upgrades on Composer, but doing
Isn't that also bad reputation of JavaScript as well? That we have this common knowledge about, oh, JavaScript is shit, and if you collect the best things, it's just 2 or 3 pages, and still React and Next.js is the most popular thing what you can have today, and it's still based on JavaScript.
I suppose front end stuff you can throw away every 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter.
or every 3 weeks.
Or maybe, yeah.
But they.
So, but I don't know, when people are using that technology to do back-end stuff, you think they're painting themselves into a box, really, aren't they? It's digging themselves into a hole. It's not going to be pretty in a few years' time.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we need some very pro JavaScript people in here. So we've got that. That's what we need. We need an interdisciplinary.
Get both the groups
Need to bring
together to
back the
battle
mega
out.
meet.
You were saying about the salary drop on PHP, but do you find that the polyglots are more valuable? Because, for example, if you're just good at PHP, that's one thing, but if you're good at software delivery, which is actually
Yeah.
about QA and about,
Yeah.
you know, like all aspects of development
Yeah.
beyond coding, that's, to me, is where you're going to see the higher salaries.
Yeah.
Not just the guy writing code, the guy saying, don't write code, use the thing, you know.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely, I do think, and I think also with speaking to people, like, I always think it's good to learn more than like one language if you can anyways, because even let's say if you're working within a business and you enjoy that business and they decide to migrate over something else, like it's good for you to have that little bit of knowledge in something else as well. But I mean, it really does depend. I don't think that they're necessarily more like valuable to a business as well. It really like does depend on needs and what people are kind of like
I mean, I suppose ultimately if someone's coming to recruitment, they're
Yeah.
trying to fill a gap, maybe
Yeah.
further down their
Yeah.
staffing level, as opposed to coming to look, you know, buying leads or
Yeah.
you know, staff developers probably a lot less likely to be found just sort of on a.
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, definitely. I think it really does depend. I've been finding a lot less I was finding a lot less polyglots, I'd say, maybe like last year. And then there's people that I obviously like catch up with in time and they're very much like, oh yeah, like I focus on PHP, but no, I wouldn't mind like a company that maybe works on a few things or like being able to just like upskill myself in X, Y, and Z as well. So yeah, I think everyone's, especially more junior individuals, aren't they? Like they want to kind of learn more things, but I don't necessarily think it's like a value thing. I still think it's very valuable to have an individual that just focuses on one thing, but it really does depend on people's needs really and what they want to do.
Go.
I feel like when we're talking about improving the reputation of the language, it's important to identify like why we're trying to improve the reputation. Like, is it to get more developers into PHP? Is it to get more companies using PHP? Is it to just look cool to the other people who use the different languages?
Definitely.
Is it to increase our pay? Like, what are we trying to do, right? Because those have different solutions. Like, if we were trying to attract more people to learn PHP, we should look at making the PHP website less of a reference guide and more of a learning platform, which I feel like it's good as a reference guide, but I don't think people go to the PHP website to learn PHP from scratch a lot of the time. If we're looking to get more companies using PHP, we need to build trust in the language. So like we have to look at the companies that are successfully using PHP and promote those companies. So I think the solutions are based on what outcome we're trying to.
Well, I think on that point, I mean, we I assume most of us are working professionally for PHP, and we are offering, or with PHP, and we are offering either the companies we work for or our clients like benefits because we're using PHP, and maybe it's just talking about that. You know, it's I mean, I've got a company that's just two of us. Well, I suppose over its lifetime, it's 2.5 people on average, and you know, we've got one. You know, we built one startup. Backend's all PHP. They're over $1 million annual recurring revenue, and they've had constant growth. But we probably don't talk about that enough. You know, just our little company of, you know, on average 2.5 people. If you added up the turnover of all the people, of the 3 or 4 companies we work for, and the software we've given them, you know, collectively, they're turning over £5-6 million on a very small headcount, because PHP enables us to do things quickly. I mean, I've worked in Java; it would have taken twice as long to do it in Java. You know, and I think, but we don't really talk about that. You know, we've probably all got stories like that where we can say, "This is the value we offer our clients, or our customers, our companies," and that's what I think we should probably be doing. And with that becomes, I don't know, credibility. And with the credibility, maybe it comes the other things like, you know, more pay, and actually people thinking, oh, we'll take this language seriously, maybe we should teach people this, or maybe there is value in getting, involved with it.
I personally think that there are two issues. So first of all, speed. How fast is PHP compared to Java, Go? I don't think it's as fast as those languages anymore. And second thing would be front-end frameworks. So things like Vue, React's all JavaScript written, and that gives JavaScript a versatility that PHP perhaps doesn't have.
But I think on the speed thing, there will be so many people working on projects that give exceptional value, and they can be run on a $10 a month iteration droplet. I mean, that is probably the majority of software, but nobody talks about it because it's not that sexy stuff, You go to a conference, so well, I'm doing 4 billion requests a second. Yeah, I might be doing 4 requests a day, 4 requests a minute, but that can still offer a lot of value. And there's so many things like that, which just put everything together.
It's a bit like top trumps, isn't it? You go, well, yeah, look at this car, it can do 220 miles an hour, but it'd be no use in Bristol City Centre. The actual practical application is that PHP is more than capable of delivering what we need it to do. Yeah, we can make it faster, but the making faster bit often is just paying a bit more on Amazon, but it's the bit for me that, particularly with going into frameworks, that I was working in Cape before I came into Laravel, but it was just how quick you can write the components. Like, it's like out-of-the-box authentication. I mean, Laravel new install provides so much out of the box that we just give to clients for free. Whereas actually, go back 10, 15 years, you could be, maybe 3 or 4 months of doing this work, which you would have been paid for. So in some respects, it's making us be paid less, because unless if you're going on feature basis and going, I'm delivering you an authenticated system, get paid for delivering that. But we often approach it based on, time and materials, whereas actually we get quicker at something, and then it becomes, we're earning less money. I mean, when I started in web in around late 1990s, we were doing static websites for everything, and everything was really expensive. I would take ages and charge for it, and people would be happy to pay for it, because that's what the baseline was. As things have come on, various services that, not static site builders, but things like Wix and Squarespace and even, WordPress.com, it's taken a whole load of the market away from us, which we could go, it's devaluing the language because this stuff that was expensive is now free. But conversely, every bit of technology is, so there's that thing, but that's why I think having the additional, just going right, if we're saying about what was your framework like 10 years ago, what's your framework going to be in 10 years? What's your job going to be in 10 years? Thinking about problem solving in software development is a route through to getting more money and getting more credibility in your industry, as opposed to the specifics of the tool. Because
don't you think you're always held back slightly if your primary language, you say, is PHP? Like, when I talk to my Java friends, and they go, still doing that, Dave?
You got Java friends, Dave?
Yeah, well. Just showing off to the camera. I'm Java friends, yeah.
No, I know what you mean, but it just becomes a bit of a dick swing for, this is faster than X, but ultimately, it's just,
It's about how fast you can deliver value.
Your boring site is faster than my boring site.
I think there's PHP is not alone in this, but I think one of the challenges is that, to probably everyone in this room, PHP is not just about the language, it's about the language and a load of tools that go with it to make it a really good place to write code. I think there are languages, especially, in a moment, especially, get into the strict type world where, things that you have to install PHP stand for example, in PHP, are just there because the language is strict typed, and all the rest of it will just crash exception. You have to adhere to rules and all the rest. So I think that's a challenge. These parts that to us are core parts these days of a modern PHP, setup are all fragmented and around the web. And if you're not in the know, the PHP website doesn't say, here's what we recommend you do, or anything like that. I think is a challenge. Anyway.
Yeah, on the tooling front, I think that, especially when you look at PHP compared to other languages, especially modern languages like Go and Rust, PHP is really disjointed. We do have really good tools. We've got Rector, we've got PHP standards, PHPSW, there's Franken PHP and Spool and all that kind of stuff. But you've got to know about those things. You've got to go and manually install them, configure them. It's all a really disjointed thing, whereas if you go and create a new Go application, formatter and linter and stuff is built directly into the language and does all that for you. It's built into the main binary. But with PHP, you come in, especially for a new developer that doesn't know these things, they're not going to know about strict typing and static analysis. And why do you have to run an extra CI step just to make your language good? You don't just run a command to run your server, you're going to set up PHP FPM and a web server like Nginx or Apache, and a bunch of other steps. It's like we've got the technology and the tools are there, but I think, especially probably the PHP Foundation, is in a place where they need some kind of push to unify this kind of thing into something that's going to be more cohesive to someone that's new to the language.
Do you think we need more talks on PHP Stat?
I think you know that kind of thing.
I was sort of worried sometimes could it ever be defunct, like VHS and Betamax, how one thing just become sort of dominant, like how we ended up just with 4 banks type thing. Could one of those other companies, say if eBay and all this just want to wipe out any possible competition, that there's, do you see what I'm getting at? Yeah, without you finishing the question. But do you see what I mean? Yeah, could we end up with just dominant programming languages?
Could it be like ASP.NET, you mean, where there is money for people that want to do it? So it's like the legacy stuff, or even like say ASP rather than ASP.NET, but that kind of thing where the fashion moves onto somewhere else.
COBOL.
Yeah.
COBOL, still good money in COBOL if you're alive.
C. You're the one last PHP developer, so you can command high salaries.
Yeah.
I think there's probably so much PHP that somebody will have to understand it for years and years to come.
My retirement plan is 1 day a week as the only PHP developer left.
Or like funded aid or something.
So you think we're safe, that's what I'm saying, it's safe.
If you can write PHP, you're not safe, because for my plan to work.
Should we accept drink off you, because we don't know what's going on?
No.
Or shiny fruits.
It's a good point though, is PHP growing and how do we measure that? I have no idea. We know that things are getting better,
Yeah.
always getting better all the time, but
It's relative share that matters as well, isn't it, rather than just growth.
I don't know how you would even begin to measure something like that either.
We can use packages, stats, but it's not really.
Yeah.
If you're going to like packages, I'm making it go on a twice daily basis.
No, but you can see the increases by the usage probably.
Yeah.
And just the user of PHP as well, or just adopters of the specific version.
I think one of the things about PHP growing is if you look at any schools or code camps and stuff like that, they're all teaching React and Go and Rust and stuff like that. Very few camps and actual real schools and universities teaching PHP to give it that credibility and to get new people into the ecosystem.
That's because of the FANG people. Because the FANG people got laid off and they go into smaller companies and they teaching what they did at the previous companies.
Facebook is FANG and they have a lot of PHP.
Exact.
Well, I learned Delphi at university. Delphi, I think it was. Pascal. So actually, if they teach it at university, you know the language had it.
But I was going to say, it is a good point though, because it's like I was mentioning going to the Bristol JS. I feel like feel like the crowd is younger of Vue.js in general. Like people, there's more.
What are you saying about us?
That's why I hesitated what I say. Hopefully you know what I mean. Like, I feel like there's, I feel like there's, I guess, more juniors. But it's good, and it's really good to see because it's good to see them getting into software development in general, and they're doing that with JavaScript. They're not doing that with PHP. I don't know how many people we get here who are truly new to the world.
How many? Put your hand up if you're under 20.
So yeah,
30.
but that is a really good point. But that's a really good point about are there new people coming into the language, and if not, why not? It's really interesting.
That's part of the problem with the reputation of the language, though, isn't it? Just its age. Like, it's not new, it's not trendy. Like,
Yeah.
you know,
The meetups for guys in their 40s.
But I mean, that's not necessarily something that you can change. PHP has been around a long time. Like, it's both, sort of indicator of its success and also sort of a curse, right? Because you're like, oh, we sit here and we laugh about COBOL and Delphi and what have you. People laugh about PHP in the same way.
It's a JavaScript thing, they're all laughing at it.
Yeah, it's possible that people laugh about the thing that they don't know. Like, it's not.
Just wait till I find out about Radio 4, they'll love that.
But also they might laugh about when they left it. So if you move along languages, if you stop using PHP in 2005, then you've got no idea what it's doing now.
No,
so when you stop using it, that is your opinion on that language, and you don't know how it's moved on since you stopped. So that's
Actually, if you do a graph of how good the language is versus the general perception, it would actually be like the opposite way round,
Maybe
Like,
they're
the
still
whole
PHP
ecosystem.
6. Still looking for PHP 6 as their next upgrade.
We should probably wrap it up. It's almost bedtime.
They need to go.
I don't know if we solved it. But
We didn't solve it, we had some good ideas given.
Some good ideas.
cool.
Can I say, I think it's not an original thought, something that Neil Zuckerman said at PHP UK at the roundtable is everyone loves saying, oh, PHP isn't dead, and all that anyone ever reads from that is PHP dead. So, like, people make this negative connotation and skip out words when they read stuff like that. So if anyone is talking about it, you should say, like, PHP is great, and this is why it's great. Not say, PHP isn't dead, we're still alive. That's still a negative connotation. I think that was a really good thing. Yeah. If you haven't seen that talk from PHP, it's on YouTube. You can see Dave.
Yeah, it's a good point to finish on.
Yeah.
Thank you all for coming. We'll head off to the pub. We can continue the conversation now if anyone feels so inclined.